If you're watching this, that means Batman games are dead. What started as a streamlined series of empowering single-player experiences to make you feel like the Batman, as illustrated critic Greg Miller put it, has now become a team-based loot grind. There are some bright spots here and there that harken back to a better time of cool boss battles and compelling side characters, but the damage is already done. Maybe Suicide Squad from Rocksteady will be good, unless it gets delayed. Again, then just play Marvel's Spider-Man 2. That's all I can say. Goodbye. And Jason? Dick was a better Robin. The Arkham series of Batman games is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. What it did for Batman and superhero games as a whole is a blissful lightning caught in a bottle that was only refined for a more nimble hero to build off of it in Marvel's Spider-Man from Insomniac Games, which drew parallels to the former when it launched. Both game series were intuitive, easy to learn, but challenging to master, and I became addicted to them enough that I went for that admittedly simple platinum for Spider-Man and a hard difficulty run for Arkham Asylum. My personal favorite out of that series, but that's a topic for another video. Regardless, both games could not be put down even after rolling the credits, so Warner Bros. Set out to make another game that you couldn't put down, no matter how hard you tried: Gotham Knights. Revealed at DC Fandom in 2020, but ultimately released and delayed up until the fall of 2022, there was an awful lot of momentum built up to that release date that involved character trailers and gameplay slices, but every time that a little bit of the game would be shown, my expectations would be yo-yoed back and forth between being kind of hopeful and excited for the game, and then trepidatious and skeptical the next. Finally, it was released on October 21st, 2022. I picked up the game, played it for 30 hours before finishing it, and I can honestly say that it's a game that you cannot stop playing. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Whenever a game is announced to be heavily leaning towards a team-based cooperative experience, no matter how many times it's mentioned that you can go at it alone, red flags start to populate gamers' minds. The terms live service, battle passes, and the dreaded microtransactions strike fear into players more than Scarecrow's strongest toxin. They were definitely a scare for Gotham Knights, mainly after the cautionary tale of a prior superhero game that came and went, no matter how many free expansions tried to salvage it: Marvel's Avengers, which they're still trying to rescue with a late addition to the roster, Winter Soldier, years after its lackluster release. In an FAQ page on the official website, it was announced that there will be no microtransactions coming to Gotham Knights, at least when it launches. So what exactly is the catch? You play as the Bat Family, a collection of highly skilled protégés trained by Batman to take on the mantle. Though playable as a single-player experience, a co-op mode will be available a month after release. Now, spoilers, I beat the game before I got a chance to check out that cooperative mode, so that won't be included in this video. Naturally, if you're going to be juggling an awful lot of characters, specifically the Bat Family, they must come off as compelling to be able to anchor us throughout the entirety of this game. Introducing Dick Grayson as Nightwing, Tim Drake as Robin, and Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, Jason Todd as Red Hood. And these are all the general staples of the Bat Family for decades and have proven to be compelling characters in several mediums. Except maybe here. You see, there's a bit of a mixed bag of emotions going on with an awful lot of the characterization and writing for this game. The writing behind the story and the characters is rather sporadic, to say the least. Heroes versus villains and the dialogue they exchange between each other is somewhat hokey and TV quality, while internal exchanges between the Bat Family are somewhat interesting, though the quality of acting behind those voices can vary from time to time. With the actor behind Red Hood working with what he's got and kind of bringing a nuance to the character of what it means to come back from the dead, well, Barbara is just flat out terrible.
And you want to use us to do it for you. But what do you get out of it?
There's also these moments when all four are together that range from energetic, like when they're formulating a plan while holding virtually every tablet that has ever been manufactured in the city of Gotham. Every time they need to make an investigation, tap, tap, tappity, tap, tap, tap. And then raging to the other side of the spectrum to the really awkward, with a drought of chemistry and pregnant pauses like this one.
You know what? Never mind.
There is, however, one adhesive glue that holds it all together: Alfred Pennyworth. He gives the Belfry the warmth it needed. There's a nuance to his demeanor and approach that brings a more susceptible believability to the family interacting with each other. He's the archetypal Alfred, often giving wisdom and being able to support the family in the more ways than one, whether it be words of encouragement or technological advancements and resources. But there's just something much more compelling about this iteration of Alfred that overshadowed the Bat family, who's frankly the central point of the entire game. Fox and Montoya are included here as side characters, and they're pretty decent, but they're not in the game enough to really have an identity. Speaking of identity as character, let's talk about Gotham City as a character. Often the environments of a game take life as you explore them. The Arkham games were no different. Gotham City in this game, which the developers boasted about being the biggest iteration of Gotham ever in a video game, definitely has a gorgeous visual aesthetic with clear inspirations and color choices that show whoever designed this place was very passionate about bringing it to life, in the sense that a cinematographer likes to paint with light certain films and are really passionate about bringing out the best in the look of a particular setting or environment. And you can definitely feel a sense of style whenever you gaze into the vistas of Gotham City here, specifically at nighttime. Programming it to feel alive was a whole different story. Character models are often repeated right next to each other, their passerby lines are kind of dull and very forgettable, and frankly I just didn't care about anything that was going on past street level. This effectively makes Gotham a city not worth caring about against a viable threat, at least one that would need to be felt like a threat. Enter the Court of Owls. I respect the game for tackling one of the most underutilized villain groups in Batman's famous Rogue Gallery, mainly because they're not a gallery member, so to speak. They're almost like the comic equivalent of the Illuminati in our world that people often create conspiracies around, preying on our paranoia like an owl preying on an insect. That paranoia and those scary elements that come along with it are lost when this game takes away the horror angle from the court and turns them into yet another taking over Gotham and restoring peace villain organization we've seen many times before. Sure, they have really elaborate design layers and a very cool taste for the theatrics, but this is Gotham City. I mean, who doesn't? Who? And hey, why have one villainous cult trying to take over the city when you can have two? The League of Shadows are also present here, and being that they weren't in the marketing much, I'll abstain from revealing too much about their nefarious plan without a fair warning. So 3, 2, 1, go! They're led by Talia al Ghul. I mean, no real surprise there, right? And that's another cardinal sin from the writing, is that often it finds itself in a situation where it thinks it's smarter or more surprising or more skilled at subverting your expectations than it really thinks that it is. An awful lot of moments where the story is trying to deviate in a different direction to throw you for a loop often ends up becoming predictable. Despite denying it early in the story, I knew from the get-go that Talia al Ghul was the one controlling the League all along. Jacob Kane, who was shown in a very persnickety mood, almost like someone who would be in control of such power, was of course going to be the voice of the Court of Owls, despite his voice being instantly recognizable, even with the modulator and his touchings earlier in the funeral. Oh, and Bruce is still alive. Wow, what a shocker. I mean, who could have not have seen that coming? Come on. Though we'll give the writing a little bit of props for keeping him dead and not necessarily just undoing the entire fabrication of his mystery. Kind of gives the final mission and who you choose to go into it with at least a little ounce of weight. So as you can see, the writing, the dialogue, the characterization, it's not necessarily carrying the game by itself. But what did I say before? This was a game made to keep you playing. A good story isn't going to do that. It's going to be the gameplay. It makes you feel like Batman. We can't forget one of the most memeable moments of IGN's online history of reviewing video games, but as much as I'm not the greatest fan of Greg Miller, his assessment was pretty much correct. The tools and mechanics and the systems bringing it all together is really what made you feel like you were the Dark Knight himself in that Arkham series. It's for this reason why Insomniac's Spider-Man drew so many comparisons to the Arkham games upon release. It's a combat system that works because it feeds into what it's like to play as a superhero. Stealth, power, strategy, and extraordinary abilities. Both of these IPs had an upgrade system that felt streamlined because of how finite the single-player campaign felt. Oddly enough, both take about an average of about 12 to maybe 15 hours, 20 if you're pushing it with the side quests, so a gamer would want to make sure that all the skills and upgrades they had acquired would have their time under the sun before the player would put it down. Gotham Knights is not interested in that. They want you to keep playing before the story takes off, as the story progresses, and even after the credits roll. So what exactly is Gotham Knights? It is a third-person brawler where you play as the Bat family. Dick Grayson as Nightwing, Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, Tim Drake as the new Robin, and Jason Todd as the Red Hood. After Batman's supposed death during the opening sequence, which admittedly is a very well choreographed action sequence, they open a case that Bruce was investigating involving Ra's al Ghul being in Gotham City in the first place. After the opening prologue that establishes Talia as a major power player and the insinuation of the Court of Owls, the game opens Gotham City for all 4 members of the Bat family to explore and take on case missions and side activities. Being this was developed by WB Montreal, the same team as that of Batman Arkham Origins, which literally lifted the same gameplay system as that of Rocksteady's, you'd think that they would just take that and apply it to the attributes of these 4 playable characters. Well, that would be wrong, because that Rocksteady system is meant for a compact game that's under 12 hours. This game wants you to keep playing long after that. So the gameplay is as follows. The left face button is your melee button, tap it for a light attack, press and hold for a heavy attack. The top face button is your range button, launching some form of projectile. Same as the prior button, tap for a light attack, hold for a heavy one. The right face button helps you evade or dodge, and the bottom is your action button. In some cases that involves you jumping or vaulting over certain platforms. Hearing all of this on paper sounds like a recipe for a worthy successor to the Arkham games, but it's how the game feels in hand that truly matters, and one of the game's greatest shortcomings. As you switch between each playable character, you'll distinctly notice how different they are in fluidity, speed, power, and agility. A saving grace is how faithful these characteristics are to each of those characters. Dick was in the circus, so he'll be one of the more vertical characters to play as, while Jason Todd focuses more on brute force and his guns rather than anything else, but is slow by proxy. Tim and Barbara kind of fall somewhere in the middle, but still feel different from each other enough to tell them apart. Unfortunately, that distinction doesn't really last long enough to detract from how sluggish the combat really feels across the board with all 4 characters anyway. At least in contrast to that of the Arkham games. Yes, it is meant to be somewhat more grounded and realistic than the prior Arkham series, but after the initial 5 hours or so, it becomes less fun and more repetitive, whereas the Arkham games had a more arcadey approach that, sure, showed Batman flying across the room in a very unrealistic manner to deliver a finishing blow, but it was fun. It's fun in hand and endless to play. Gotham Knights knew the game was made to be a longer experience, so fun, kinetic combat was not going to be putting the carrot at the end of the stick, at least not in the way that they wanted to in 2022. This was one of the biggest detractors that Marvel's Avengers had back in its release in 2020, virtually made by every critic, complaining about how grindy the endgame was in order to give you the best assets possible to use in-game. When Gotham Knights started to show the different craftables and customization options and skill tree in the trailers leading up to its release, people started to get understandably worried. To placate those concerns, devs reaffirmed that there were going to be no microtransactions, everything had to be earned in-game. I kept this in mind as I progressed in the story and tried to understand what could make the combat more diverse and, at the end of it all, fun. Completing cases and missions, whether they were part of the main story or not, earned you XP, resources, and craftable items depending on what the rewards for each mission were. Resources, which can also be found in crates left in the environment, let you craft new suits, melee weapons, and ranged weapons, while XP naturally levels your character up and earns you attribute points to spend in the skill tree. Now notice I said characters as in plural. That's because regardless of which character you used for a mission, XP, leveling up, resources, and AP points carry on over across the whole Bat family. This was definitely a smart move on WB Montreal's part to cut down on what already was a pretty girthy grind to run through certain playstyles, so thanks WB Montreal for having a little bit of mercy on us. This way you can choose who to main amongst the characters almost at any point in the game, so you can double back from using Red Hood for example, much like I was after realizing how slow he was, and then focus on a different character such as Robin to see how much quicker and tactical I can push him to be without having to grind all over again. Looking ahead at some of the visible skills available to unlock, there seems to be a little bit of something for every type of player. Some skills help my chances of critical hit and health augmentation, while others don't really appeal to me that much, but they'll definitely help someone who wants to approach a scenario from a more stealthy angle. Although I was really curious to know what that knighthood tab was all about. We'll circle back to that a little bit later. So far, we're off to a decent start of how the upgrade system works, so let's get out there and put it to task.
Supplements. Hey.
Well, that didn't take long, did it? Remember when I said that there was going to be a little bit of a catch to the devs saying that there weren't going to be any microtransactions in the game? Yeah, after the first act or so, I started to kind of come across the theme, the overall encompassing notion of what this game was ultimately trying to achieve without the need of microtransactions. They simply just wanted you to keep playing. Several encounters would quickly become stale or repetitive for two primary reasons. Number one, the physics system at play is literally hit or miss throughout every encounter. Often I would feel like some hits made contact, while others, I would tell Batgirl to go in one direction only for her to go in the other, resulting in a stun lock from an enemy or me doing a completely different action that I didn't intend. Speaking of enemies, number two, enemy variety and AI programming, or I should say lack thereof, null and voids a lot of the interesting upgrades I was thinking about getting because you're pretty much fighting the same enemies over and over if you think about it. You have a brawler, a shooter, a bomber, and a heavy. After that, just swap your visual aesthetic between the mob, the freaks, the regulators, and even the Court of Owls, and you are set. The only reprieve I experienced from this cycle was the League of Shadows, introducing a dynamic way of timing your dodges to execute the perfect attack combo. One of the few times I felt satisfied by the gameplay. More than what I could say from the Talon enemies from the Court of Owls, at least the feral ones, who had the potential to rival the League in terms of how fun it was to fight them, until those Talons, specifically the feral ones, their AI started to spam unparallelable attacks, making the entire encounter just one giant dodge fest, draining all fun out of the fight. I turned to stealth in an effort to channel my inner Batman, like the Rocksteady games did, but in order to do that, your enemies need to have actual peripheral vision to kind of ante up the risk of being detected. Seriously, stealth is pretty much a joke in this game, don't stress over it. Even levels that require you, quote unquote, to be undetected, have an environment that practically makes it impossible to be seen. To me, this meant that it was time to expedite these pockets of repetition, so I turned to the crafting and upgrade system for help. Gaining XP and allocating AP to my desired characters never came across as a problem during my playthrough, but crafting suits, weapons, and garnishing them with these transmogs felt overproduced and unnecessarily blown out. Some costumes genuinely looked badass, while others looked like they were made in 2007. Quickly, the mod page filled with multiples of the same mod, and others I really didn't need, or I chose to fuse them to make a better mod, and then quickly realizing that an even better mod than that was already available in the inventory, so either a better one took its place, or it all just became redundant. Also, what the hell is up with this resource system? Would you believe me if I told you that not once did I bother to look into what these sources were called, where they came from, what they meant, or how many I needed for a certain craftable item? I simply just looked at my suits and weapons and built the strongest one in my favor that was coated in green. I was mindlessly crafting new weapons, swapping mods, and building new suits to progress, just mindlessly going through the menus and continuing to keep playing. And that's when it dawned on me. I was slowly turning and molding into one of them, the key audience that this game was designed for. The crowd that laughs easily at the quips that these heroes deliver almost as if it was a Marvel movie. The kids that need a bit of a redundant evidence board to tell us what we already know on how to progress throughout the story of the game. The players that prefer a loot grind system versus a very succinct story-based single-player experience. The gamers that aren't interested in a great game. They're interested in a game that they can't stop playing. I saw the broken plate and realized the sharp piece to drive what could be the lethal blow into this game was missing. That piece was traversal. Zipping and gliding in the Arkham games was intuitive, fluid, and almost had a rhythm to how you got around the environment. It also didn't have to overcomplicate itself since Asylum was, well, on the Asylum Island, not much elsewhere to go at that point, and City only dealt with a closed-off fragment of Gotham in the first place. Knight recognized that the stakes needed to be elevated by risking the entirety of Gotham and therefore needed Batman to cover the entire city, so reinforcements were called to even the odds by throwing in the Batmobile as a means of getting around a little quicker. A divisive point of that game, sure, but there was no denying the speed it provided when nothing else was available. Gotham Knights has the Bat Cycle. While the cloaking abilities that would make James Bond and Q proud were present, any member of the Bat family can call upon the Bat Cycle by pressing up on the D-pad anywhere in the city. The problem is that unlike the Batmobile, there is an abundant amount of janky physics tied to the cycle that makes it tedious to drive around. That is, if you really care about controlling it in the first place, otherwise you could just go straight, since our dear protectors of Gotham are incapable of actually crashing into anything. I mean, seriously, just try to crash into a car, the Batcycle will just kind of veer off to the side, so it kind of just eliminates any sense of risk or any attention to the detail of maneuvering the Batcycle. So one figures we can take to the skies to move about faster via an arsenal of gliding abilities and ziplining maneuvers like in the original games. Well, you can get one of those to start. Remember, they want you to keep playing. And an essential variable of that formula is to have the grapple function tied to the right bumper and having that be the only source of verticality at the beginning of the game. Though I got used to relying on this more than the Batcycle after a few hours, a big realization popped into my head. Back when the game was still not released and they were doing an awful lot of marketing with several character trailers, one of those gameplay character trailers clearly showed Batgirl gliding around in the city. But that ability was nowhere to be found in any of her skills, upgrade trees, button functions, you name it. At least none of the ones that were available to me from the get-go. My focus then turned to that of the locked Knighthood tab that I mentioned earlier. Toward the end of the game, I felt comfortable enough to tackle the objectives needed to unlock Knighthood for Robin, since he ended up being my main character to play as. The objectives are your traditional busy work, but they were doable. I just figured I would leave this towards the end because I thought that Knighthood was meant to be a climactic transition for the character that you decided to favor, so pardon me for putting a little emphasis of importance on this particular quest. Upon unlocking Knighthood, a very Batman-inspired suit is awarded, and Robin unlocks a new skill tree titled Knighthood in that menu, which begins with a new ability unlocked: teleportation. That's right. What was the default mechanic in the original game, gliding, or in this case a dynamic form of traversal like teleportation, has to be unlocked after you do a set of numeric objectives to unlock Knighthood. And I understand you can unlock this a whole lot earlier in the game to make traversal a lot cleaner, but how was I supposed to know that from the beginning? And whether you go with the original forms of traversal via grappling or this new form of dynamic traversal such as teleportation or gliding or such as Red Hood's mystical bounce, any of these forms of moving about the city proved to be trite due to the terrible performance optimization of the game, particularly on console. Multiple times the frame rate, which was announced to be locked at 30 FPS right before release, would chug repeatedly whenever using the Batcycle or zipping through the rain-drenched rooftops. Speaking of those rain effects, they would look terrible on textures, practically becoming JPEGs that would just move downwards on people's suits and outfits. And this is why the last gen versions were cancelled? To, as the devs put it, provide players with the best gameplay experience possible? Why? Say it with me this time. They want you to keep playing. Now, let me pose to you a hypothetical. Let's say you unlock knighthood for all of the characters, unlocking their faster traversal method as well, and there's one that you favor over the others to move about the city faster. Like I kind of touched upon a little earlier in the essay, yes, you can switch between characters to tackle missions using that traversal method, but to do so, you have to go back to the belfry, go inside, and switch via the armory on the far left side. Here's the catch. Going back to the belfry triggers the night and day patrol system. This is a system meant by the devs to make the random crime throughout the city seem more realistic by disappearing and reappearing at random every time you end a nightly patrol. I appreciate the sentiment, but not only did this create a more cumbersome back and forth whenever I wanted to switch characters, but should the current mission require a certain amount of crime scenarios be completed and you switch characters by happenstance, you now need to wait until whenever that night patrol yields that random crime that you need again. Admittedly, the wait times weren't really that long to wait for some of those crimes to reappear, but this would happen on the regular. And it still generated an unnecessary amount of padding and repetition. Need I explain why? They want you to keep playing. This would also explain why many of the fast travel icons on the map are locked behind its own side activity that requires you to scan a numeric amount of drones each and every time. Sure, this isn't the first game to do this sort of thing. Need I remind you the towers in Breath of the Wild and virtually every Ubisoft game? But you clearly designed a dynamic form of traversal to get around much quicker for each character. Why lock both behind some busy work just for it to be done later as opposed to earlier and make the whole game much more streamlined and fun? This also brings us to the side activities in the game to keep you that amount of busy. It may not appear as overwhelming as, say, collecting over 200 Riddler trophies, but the batarangs spread across the city, the same compromised identity missions for each character, the random crime that starts to feel not so random and formulaic, and the checkbox challenges to gain more resources and rewards just felt kind of empty. And don't get me started on that knighthood tab again. Turns out that you can pretty much reach knighthood for all 4 characters if you want to. I may be in the minority here, but I was seeing knighthood, as I mentioned before, as a very special achievement for whichever Bat family member I wanted to be the successor to Batman. At least that's what the devs made it seem like it was going to be leading up to release during certain interviews. So you can imagine my heartbreak when I realized that not only can you get knighthood for all 4 members of the Bat family, but all of them go through the same cutscene with Alfred when you do so. It's literally verbatim the same cutscene, even with the same dialogue and animations. This not only really diffused any desire in me to want to keep playing the game before moving on to other titles, but also made me not want to replay the final hours of the game to see the other 3 endings with Bruce inside of the Lazarus Pit climax. Frankly, I'd rather just watch them on YouTube. I was just exhausted and drained at the thought of what I would need to do, all of that busy work, to try to get a much more complete experience out of Gotham Knights. It made me feel like I was just going through the motions of a shell of what a Batman game used to be. Why should I keep playing? Because it's what he would have wanted us to do. I mean, not him, but the original WB Montreal team that made Batman Arkham Origins. You see, everything that I just mentioned related to the lethargic traversal system, the loot grind mentality, as well as the crafting of resources and being able to scavenge to be able to build better equipment, and the notions of continuing to keep playing, these were all simply just shimmers of a very grim future that I was in store for continuing to play this game. A future that would have either made me prioritize other games versus this one in the fall of 2022, or would have made me drop this game altogether completely. Despite getting repetitive as they eventually progressed, some of the missable cutscenes you can trigger in the belfry between the Bat family via the little character icons that appear throughout the environment have these tender moments about grieving the loss of Bruce. Not Batman, but specifically Bruce Wayne, the human being, and what he would have wanted for them to do going forward. One of the running themes in almost all of Batman mythology across the comics, movies, shows, and even video games is how Batman is more than just a man. He is a symbol for justice and, above all, hope. Hope to one day see the light at the end of the darkness. And that's something that the characters here are trying to keep in mind as they progress. Hearing Bruce's many voices over the years evoking the message about hope and looking ahead, I myself looked for that light ahead of time with the remainder of the game after witnessing my first run-in with Harley Quinn at Blackgate Prison. So what saved it from such a dark fate of me ultimately putting the game down and just dropping it? Well, it was like these little glimmers of hope and almost kind of remembrance of the underdog of the entire Arkham franchise, Batman Arkham Origins, and the development of that game from WB Montreal that made it one of the underrated gems all these years later. Shortly after coming out on top out of the Blackgate prison riot to the beat of a differently keyed cover of Livin' La Vida Loca, a new case file opens to keep pursuing Harley Quinn in her scheme to create her own army of minions, so to speak. You know, because she's crazy, as always. Her motivation and logic doesn't really make much sense in the grand picture sort of thing. In fact, most of the villains in this game, whether they're part of the main story or not, fail to have any kind of compelling reasons to care about them or see the truth in their actions, let alone feel sorry for them. One definitive example of this is Mr. Freeze, who is very easy to have empathy for in Arkham City, but is one hair away from turning into Schwarzenegger's take from Batman and Robin in this game, complete with icy one-liners. But that's not the point. The point is that my curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to pursue Harley's case, which led me to a fight between Nightwing and a group of amplified enemies Harley created. This new batch of foes actually made me use some upgrades I have neglected up until this point, and resulted in some actually kind of fun gameplay. Fun in Gotham Knights. A few hours later, while begrudgingly zipping through the city, I heard a citizen being ambushed by a man with seemingly no face. Upon taking him down and investigating the included intel, a case file to stop Clayface was opened up. As Red Hood, I chose to move forward in this mission and led to what was actually a visually gripping chase between me and Clayface throughout the streets of Gotham City. A little over the top, sure, but it was explosive and genuinely exhilarating, at least enough for me to ignore the dropped frames here and there and the janky controls for the Batcycle once again. Much like Harley, Mr. Freeze breaks out and threatens to take Gotham back to the Ice Age with the help of the regulators. As mustache twirling as he and his devilish plan can come off at times, there was a level of actual strategy and critical thinking behind my moveset, the elemental damage my weapons were dealing, and what mods I needed to equip in order to take on Mr. Freeze effectively. Something I haven't done throughout my playthrough up until this point. And it was at this point in all three of their respective case files that I was more interested in their missions than pretty much anything that was going on with the conventional Court of Owls or League of Shadows material in the main storyline. However, I knew I'd be shooting myself in the foot as a player of the game if I beat all of their case files now, otherwise I wouldn't have been kept playing as long as I did the way Warner Bros. Games wanted me to do. So I decided to pace out the case files for Harley, Freeze, and Clayface across my playthrough so that most of their climactic battles lined up with the final rather cheap battle between me and Talia. I mean, seriously, what is she, Sephiroth? This was undoubtedly the right choice I made, one I encourage many prospective players of Gotham Knights to articulate. It made leveling up, experimenting with different combat styles, and switching between the Bat family much more worthwhile. It also made the third act more grandiose than the actual story finale, which felt kind of truncated by comparison. Harley wears her iconic jester suit and comes at you with her signature mallet in a wildly kinetic fight. Freeze uses a cold-blasting mech beetle type thing that, while a bit cliche for a video game, demonstrates the scope of the fight effectively. And last but not least, my personal favorite, Giga Clayface, goes from a liquid form chasing you throughout the sewers to a molten rock golem sort of thing in a final stance to take you down, towering over you with heavy attacks and daunting projectiles. I felt authentic exhilaration trying to beat this guy. The last time I felt this form of adrenaline from a WB Montreal game was that Deathstroke fight from Arkham Origins. Coursing through these side quests propelled me further in the main story, which brought me to the Labyrinth segment, in which your character is virtually poisoned with a hallucinogen by the Court of Owls and is tested by navigating a stone maze filled with quote-unquote puzzles. They're not really puzzles, you just kind of like move from one platform to the other, and enemies before reaching the wizard behind the curtain of smoke and mirrors. Though the end result is a little underwhelming, there's no denying the atmosphere during the set piece, harkening back to the dramatic and somewhat horror-like roots from some of the more memorable moments in Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and even Arkham Knight respectively. It's not as good, definitely not, but there was an appreciated attempt. This made me think for a fleeting second that maybe they did want to make another great Batman game like Arkham Origins. Maybe WB Montreal genuinely wanted to be a worthy successor to Rocksteady to continue the franchise and maybe make a worthwhile game where you truly do feel like the Batman, or at least a member of the Bat family that feels entirely like your own. But alas, unless one of us were able to be a fly on the wall during the meetings between WB Montreal and the investors who had a stake in the publishing of this game during development, then no one, not even me, will truly ever know. After my 30-hour playthrough of Gotham Knights, I had completed the campaign, knighthood for all 4 members, closed the secondary villain cases, and unlocked all fast travel points to see all the corners of Gotham before finally deleting the game off my console, leaving behind primarily all of the collectathon-like activities. Hyperbolic terms like trash, garbage, or God forbid the word mid, as a lot of kids like to say these days, don't necessarily come to mind. What comes to mind is a younger, angrier Bruce making mistakes, suffering the consequences, and learning to be a better symbol for hope and justice going forward. A theme I'm sure WB Montreal is all too familiar with, and I hope they take in great strides after the release and reception of Gotham Knights. They wanted to make a game I kept playing, but eventually I had to put it down. More things were on the horizon, and it may have been the game others wanted, even some may have loved, but fans of the legacy of Batman, Rocksteady, and even WB Montreal themselves didn't need or deserve. The build-up, development, and release of Gotham Knights brought me back to one of the more seminal, quintessential Batman moments in one of the best iterations of the character in Batman Begins, where Alfred asks Bruce,
Why do we false?
so that we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Thank you guys so much for watching my essay on Gotham Knights. If you enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up button. If not, hit the thumbs down, and of course let me know of you guys' insights and opinions on the game, the video essay, and everything else Gotham Knights related in the comment section below. If you guys want to stay tuned for more video essays as well as reviews on all things Batman and Spider-Man, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and if you want to go a step above, join the channel as a member. That way your name ends up in the end credits. As always, stay humble, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.